So, what might an hour of emotional literacy look like? I've talked on many occasions about the fact that it's astounding. You'd think it's an almost scientifically impossible scenario to consider an education complete without discussing 1/3 of the human experience. So, what does that look like? What is emotional literacy? Um, and In order to see something clearly as a multidimensional experience, it has to be looked at from multiple vectors, just like a planet. You can't just say the Earth is hot because you're looking at one particular location in a desert while the sun is shining. You have to look over the course of time from multiple filters, and the more dimensions through which an object is viewed, the more complex and nuanced it becomes, the deeper the understanding and empathy. So the first thing is creator and result. So emotions or feelings both create the reality around them through thought, through experience, and through action. All action in human history is a direct result of the biological impulse that happens synergistically with a feeling. So you feel hungry and you get up and do something about it. You're afraid of being burned alive, so you run from the forest fire. All behavior stems from an emotion. And the behavior creates or co-creates the reality. But all emotions also are created by the environment. So there's this dynamic of both creating the reality and being created by the reality. All feelings, all emotions are constrictive or expansive. So joy, a very expansive emotion; fear, a constricting emotion. And this speaks in part to the biological intersection with both feelings and emotions, that feelings and emotions are partnered with the body, and the constricting emotions correlate to tightening, to not breathing, to smallness, to aches, to tightening in a variety of different ways in different nerves and different muscles in the body. Or expansive, relaxing, opening, freeing, moving. Emotions and feelings both can be experienced through a decimal lens or a wave. I just have this feeling in kind of a wave amorphous pattern of looking at a feeling or an emotion through the feminine perception, where it's not about being objective and outside and measuring. It's about being a part of, being one with the emotion. And so you can look at feelings, you can look at emotions through a wave type feminine lens, or you can look at emotions through a more decimal or mathematical lens. I feel fear 2 out of 10. I feel joy 6 out of 10. There is a 30% mix of fear right now, a 20% mix of excitement, a little bit of dread, 10-20%, and a little bit of curiosity, up 30-40%. And this is the mix. So you've got a decimal lens where one steps outside of the experience to talk about the experience in digital terms. You have emotions, which are internally generated states. And so you think of the emotion of love. And it's often something that's generated over time. In many situations, love is not an instant feeling. It is an emotion that comes through the layering of many memories in the biology, where they opened the door, they smiled in a way that reminded you of your grandmother, they gave you a flower that brought a sense of joy, they anticipated your fall and caught you, they extended a hand, and each of these is a feeling in the moment that becomes a memory in the body and in the psyche. And having become a memory in the body and the psyche, and synergized and partnered with many other memories over time, it is now associated with a name. So a name or a thought says, "What about Joe?" And suddenly this tapestry of biological memory erupts into consciousness, and there is a feeling of warmth, a feeling of joy. But Joe is nowhere in sight. Joe is just a thought. It's not an immediate environment. It is a self-generated state, meaning Joe may have been there in 1984, and he may have been there in 1985, and he may have done this and this, but these are all nested in the biology of memory, to a point where now, Joe, you have an emotion, you have a conglomeration of memory, of association, of meaning, that is held within the individual who is experiencing the emotion. It is not generated by the immediate environment. And this is the distinction between emotions and feelings. Emotions are states that are internally generated, admittedly out of the past. So one could say that a pattern of feelings over time that become associated with a person, a name that associates with the person, a face, a photograph, allow someone to recall and regenerate and construct a language of feeling from the inside, from the past, and from the future. The future has an enormous amount of influence on emotion. It is the projected future based on the known past. The emotion of terror, being cut, being hurt, being made to feel small, being marginalized, being bullied, taken into a silent room and being threatened never to tell someone. The emotion of terror is in part generated by the projected future. You think of that person and you imagine what would come if you encountered them again in that quiet room. It is a memory of horror from the past, also a projection in the future. Again, often nothing to do with the present. The sociopath that rapes you in private may be smiling in the present moment, but you have an associative pattern in the past projected in the future, creating an internalized state that is at times dissociative with the present moment, with the feelings of the present moment, in part because split personalities create split behavior, where you have someone smiling at you in public, hurting you in private. That's a split personality. It's two different personas that have very little to do with one another. And so the emotion is what's generated from the projected future and the past. The feeling is generated from the stimulation and feeling of the immediate present in the environment of the present. So emotions self-generated, feelings more environmentally generated. Emotions more about the past and future and built up more over time. Feelings, the innocence of the moment. You have the continuum of intensity for all feelings and all emotions, from unconsciously barely noticeable to intensely present and, the predominant overwhelming feeling, just like amplification. You have the dimension of tone, hue, and color. The fact that in the synesthetic experience of reality, many emotions are associated with different sounds, different colors, when we playing a symphony, etc., and the drums and thunderclouds and gray and stuff. So we have the synesthetic or tone of emotions, where it's almost as if we see pictures and colors and hues in the tapestry, the color wheel of an infinite number of human states, an infinite number of feelings, much like the color wheel. A computer can refract the color wheel into 256 million distinct colors, not because that's the ultimate end of the refraction point of light, but simply as the human eye can't tell more after about 1,000 different distinct points of color, and so what's the point of going over 256 million? Feelings are the same way. They're blends. When you get green, you've got blue and you've got yellow, and you're blending them together and you get green. Similarly, when you combine helplessness and hurt and loneliness and juxtapose that with dissociation, you get hate. So it's a combination of different states coming together to produce a new state, a new feeling, a new emotion. You have the dimension of integration or integrity and fragmentation. So with an integrated personality, you have a lot of unity in the state. Whereas in a fragmented and disintegrated personality, you have the little child screaming in pain, you have the adolescent raging at the child, you have the young adult trying to look cool, you have the bitterness of the older age, you have the adaptive personas trying to pretend that none of this is going on and to be hidden. And all of these states have nothing to do with one another. They are pulling in different directions, screaming with different feelings and different states and different strategies for survival, versus someone in a state of deep peace, being able to hold and be present to all of these different things in a state of acceptance, in a state of welcome, in a state of love and attunement to the self, bringing and weaving the various personas and ages together. Focus is, of course, a very important dimension of feeling and emotion. You have the focus on here, what's going on in the body, and then you have the focus on what's going on over there. We have the focus on me, and we have the focus on you, and anywhere in between. We have the past, we have the present, and we have the future focuses. Another thing that feelings and emotions both are that's incredibly significant is a key part of consciousness. And they're often the thing that brings one into the present in a conscious state. One's mindlessly doing something, whatever, and then something happens and an emotion is triggered, a feeling is triggered, and we become aware that I am the one witnessing this feeling, witnessing this emotion. Emotions and feelings are both precursors of change. They change us, meaning they change our state, and with that, they change our identity. Our identity is what we do, what we say, what we feel, and what we think. We say, that's me. I did that. I felt that. So, feelings and emotions are precursors of change. By changing our identity, and the identity, particularly in a traumatic cultural framework, seeks familiarity, seeks continuity, seeks the known of continuity as a safety strategy. In highly traumatized culture, the greatest terror and fear is of being out of control in the unknown, because all terror is projected into the unknown. And in that unknown, or the fear of the unknown, comes the attachment to the familiar, to safety, the safety of the familiar, the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And in that clinging, the most known part is the past and present identity. And so having decided I am the one who hates, I am the one who is angry, we then propel our behavior to be consistent. Well, what does an angry person do right now? Well, they should shout, they should punch someone, they should storm away. And so the attachment we have to our identity ensures that we propel reality forward in a state of continuity with the past to cling to the familiar. Feelings and emotions are also a reflection of belief. Meaning, if we're in prison and we believe we are wrongfully in prison, and that if you're a good person, you will be attacked by bad people and that bad people always win, your state will be, your emotional and feeling state will reflect this belief with bitterness, with dejection, with apathy, with rage, with helplessness. That is an accurate reflection on an emotional dimension of those beliefs. If, like Nelson Mandela, spending 27 years in hard labor in Robben Island on prison, you believe in a destiny, you believe in seizing the moment, you believe that you can make a difference, that it's never too late, that prison offers a time of deep reflection and learning, your feelings, your emotions will reflect those beliefs as faithfully as the former beliefs, with determination, with curiosity, with passion, with resolve. Feelings are a readout of the environment at the intersection of human need. All humans in history, all cults in history, have a set of hierarchical needs that begin with survival, that continue with security of that survival, that move on to a sense of love and belonging, which is often the capstone of tribal or mammalian survival, and then to self-esteem, the becoming of the socially acceptable ideal or the ideal cultivated within oneself, developing one's skills, integrating with the cultural and surrounding environment with increasing degrees of competency, creating abundance and thus increasing safety, security, survival, self-esteem, love and belonging, and skills, creating abundance. And then the need to transcend the limited self and become a part of something bigger than oneself. These human needs are present, and every facet of our outer environment intersects with these needs, making it easier for us to feel a sense of love and belonging, or harder, making it easier for us to believe in the continuity of our survival and security, or harder. Someone pulls out a gun, kills your best friend, steals all your money, and threatens to kill you. Your love and belonging has just gone down. You've lost your best friend. Your money, your chance of survival and security in a capitalist framework, has just been decimated. And your self-esteem, telling the truth, your right to self-expression, is being cut under threat of death. There is a collapse of one's ability to meet one's human needs in that given environment. And with that collapse, as the intersection of the environment with the innate hierarchy of human needs meet, feelings and emotions provide a digital readout of what's being taken away or what's being given. Feelings and emotions are magnets of awareness and consciousness. You feel angry, so you look, what am I angry about? And suddenly your whole consciousness is clustered around, how could my best friend do that? So now your identity has been located around the cluster of events that holds the highest emotional charge. Emotions and feelings are magnets of awareness and consciousness and serve as stimulants to analyze the patterns that most affect our ability to meet or not to meet our human needs. They are co-creators of the present moment. If you think about the experience of your feelings and emotions, and imagine taking them away. Why do you open your eyes in the morning? There's no urgency that stimulates thought. So you don't have the thought, I am now awake. There's no feeling to motivate the thought. No thought is worse or better than another, so there's no motivation to change. You see, there are no scary thoughts when you have no feelings, no emotions. There's no beautiful thoughts. It's all completely irrelevant. Without feeling, without thought, without that chemical of I like that, I don't like that, without the underlying theme of wanting to feel good and not wanting to feel bad, which is an emotional experience, there's no action. There's no thought, there's no movement. And so emotions combine with thoughts to create strategy and create maps of reality that create projections. If I do this, I will feel good more than if I do this, where I will feel bad. This one will feel better than this one. Therefore, I want this one more than this one. And the way that we navigate through life is using the map we generate and our projections of not only what feels good and what feels bad, but within a hierarchical framework. Like we say, having sex with that woman would feel good, but being shot by her husband would not. Okay? So pretty equal so far. So what do you choose? Well, then you bring in thought and time and you say, well, being shot lasts an awfully long time. I think I'm going to prioritize not being shot over this. And so having decided that there are lots of things that feel good and feel bad in different ways, we then use our brain and our map of reality and past experience to overlap with all of this to say, okay, I think this one's more important than this one in this situation based on what? The long-term projections of the fallout within a given environment of pleasure and pain. Not only, of course, for ourselves, because to the degree that we are empathic human beings, if those we care about are in pain, our odds of feeling pain go up as we're connected to them. Oh my goodness, I would love to tell my wife to shut the fuck up. I've had it with this. Okay, fine. However, she doesn't just shut the fuck up and feel happy about it. She pouts, feels miserable, takes it personally, asks about our marriage for the next 2 weeks. So I will endure this painful moment to avoid dealing with 2 weeks of feeling like there's no way I can be happy, because every time I look over, I've got this sulking person looking at me as if I've ruined their life. And it's just too difficult to maintain an optimistic state in that environment. It just never seems to work out. So I've got to make them feel good so that I can feel good. And so you get the codependency that comes with the awareness that feelings and emotions are viral in nature. So feelings and emotions are a viral meme that travel laterally within empathic human consciousness. And this Emotional Life, a PBS series, documents the fact that if you're in proximity with a depressed person, you are 25% more likely to feel depressed than if you're not in proximity with a depressed person. Similarly, if you're in proximity with a joyful person, you're 25% more likely to feel joyful. And we all want to feel good, and we don't want to feel bad. And ultimately, this leads to a more sophisticated awareness that if we're going to feel peak good and get our goal, we have to do it in partnership with other people. Because if we get our goal at the expense of making everyone around us miserable, we will quickly be infected by their misery, and so our goal is not actually going to bring us any happiness at all. It's going to bring more misery. So how do we get these people to like what we like, or to help us? How do we help them meet their human needs for survival, security, love, and belonging, etc., while meeting our own needs? And this leads inevitably to the awareness that the single most important science to discover, practice, learn, and master is the science of collaborative well-being. The single most important science is the science of collaborative well-being based on empathy. And sociopaths, of course, can do a lot of things without being infected with the negative impact of their actions, because they've closed off their mirror neurons and are focusing purely on themselves, a survival coping mechanism to compensate for a sociopathic environment. However, being in a sociopathic state is far more numb and thus far more meaningless and miserable than being in an empathic state in high joy. So a sociopath is able to prioritize actions that ensure their survival, but doesn't get to enjoy them very much because the dissociation from feelings is neutral. You don't get to dissociate from negative feelings and associate with positive feelings. The emotional aperture of the human heart is much like the eye. If you open the eye, you're going to see everything that's there. Gee, that's awfully ugly. It is. You can do something about that, or you can have an awfully ugly thing there. But this is rather nice. You see it all. When you open the aperture, you see it all. And the more you open the aperture, the more it all affects you. And a sociopath, which closes the aperture, is not affected at all by other people screaming and stuff. But they're also not able to enjoy the full beauty, the exquisiteness of life. It is a lower level of well-being. And so sociopathic behavior is relegated to traumatic coping mechanisms, which are environments where individuals are so threatened by the sociopathic aspects of the culture that they literally feel that if they attune to the cult around them, they will die. And so they dissociate from the cult around them, dissociate from their own feelings in order to do so, survive with sociopathic behavior, but do not get to enjoy life. And this goes back to the hierarchy of human needs, where survival and security of survival come first, but right after that is love and belonging. So as soon as the sociopath has survived by killing this, that, whatever is the strategy, and feel some security around the survival, they're going to want to meet their next need for love and belonging, which means opening up into feelings, which includes having remorse and grief for the sociopathic behavior that kept them alive or got them through the day, etc. And so it's very difficult to transition out of that sociopathic state back into an empathic state, particularly when you have a sociopathic, traumatically illiterate cult, which does not take any responsibility for inducing the sociopathic state in the first place. It is not a normal human state, meaning you have to have a sick environment repeatedly to induce a sociopathic, traumatized state. But when the cult is so sociopathic, it doesn't empathize with its victims, it becomes very difficult for an individual to become more emotionally literate than the cult around them. And so often once the descent into the sociopathic state is made, there is the shame, the secrecy, etc., that is designed to perpetuate that state. And since the cult not wanting to own its responsibility to provide an empathic environment for all of its members, abusing a large percentage of its members in any number of different ways, is often fine with that, because not wanting to take responsibility, it's looking for scapegoats to blame, and sociopaths make an easy target. But another way of looking at it would be to say, hey, you all, together, through the combination of not requiring any oversight and parenting, sociopathic schools, bullying, a schizophrenic, violent media, addiction, and this and that, you have caused so much pain to this individual's brain that in order to survive and think clearly, they have had to completely dissociate from your bullshit just to live. They are in agony that is too painful to feel, so of course they're not going to be paying attention to you. You're the fuckers that did this. Wake up, start lifting some of that pain off, apologize to this individual, and they'll stop behaving sociopathically. But this would actually be intelligent, and emotionally illiterate cultures are not. And so rather than that, I know, let's blame the entire stupidity of an emotionally abusive sociopathic cult on these individuals that we have traumatized the most into a sociopathic state. Let's put them in jail. Let's kill the Jews. Let's get them, because the last thing we want to do is acknowledge our cruelty in a sociopathic cult that is all about survival and stuff, and that is a shame-based cult. Because in shame-based cults, anyone who does something wrong is punished and blamed and scapegoated. So nobody wants to admit that they're doing anything wrong, but everyone is doing something wrong. The shame-based cult is doing a lot wrong. The enforcers of the shame-based cult are doing a lot wrong. Everyone who plays their role complicit with a shame-based cult is doing lots of things wrong. But we don't want to be punished. So we have to agree on a group of people who are going to take the hit, who will be the scapegoats. Going back to that ancient story where some clever tribe a few thousand years ago was noticing that all wasn't peaches and cream in their tribe. Surprise to surprise. Cults have been dumb, stupid, ignorant from the beginning of time. That's what makes them cults. So, what are we going to do? Okay, we've got this problem. So-and-so's getting violent. So-and-so's getting drunk. Oh, goodness, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. But we don't really want to say that. So let's blame it on a goat. Brilliant. You get two goats. You say, this is the good goat. This goat is the evil goat who's causing all our problems. So let's hit this goat. Let's throw rocks at this goat. Let's chase it out of the village and curse it for bringing ill feeling, misery to our village, right? Let's throw it out. And so they drive this goat out into the desert. And they say, like every dumb cult, now our problems are solved. There will be no more wars. There will be no more, the war to end all wars. There will be that. We have passed the law, So the scapegoat escapes with all the delusions and stupidity and projections of the tribe until they discover, surprise, surprise, that there's still problems. Where's the goat herd? We got to get another one. We've got to stone another goat. Now, this sounds stupid because it is. It's about as stupid as blaming emotionally illiterate, shame-based, abused, isolated, addicted young teens for shooting up their schools. To in some way or another say, I'm here and I'm not enjoying this fucked up cult you've told me I should be so lucky to feel. It's that kind of stupid, or the stupidity of treating an entire race to slavery, dehumanizing it, turning their medication and pain management into Schedule I drugs without any alternatives, sticking them in slums with rotten schools, and then deciding that when they're mad about it and express that anger, that they should be disproportionately locked up. It's about as dumb as burning 6 million Jews. All our problems projected on the scapegoat, and pretend that there's nothing wrong with any of us, that we're highly intelligent, and we just need to kill these people, these goats, lock them up, kill them, torment them, shame them, do something that makes it very clear that this has nothing to do with us, and in doing so, abdicate all of our power and responsibility to a goat, to some poor teenager, who, if we had any competency and knew what we were doing, would not be left in a chronically shame-based, frustrated, and enraged emotional state, completely marginalized and ignored by their teachers, who put on a straight face in this bullshit and say, now that you've all been nicely abused by your addictive parents and come to this and that, don't know what the fuck's going on and have a miserable future in which you're a subhuman being because of the color of your skin. Hello. We'd like you to study a fictitious cat. Pay attention. See cat run. How about a fictitious dog that doesn't exist? See Spot run. You got that? Now, can we all pretend that this is the real world? That being fucked up by your old man doesn't matter because we refuse to acknowledge the truth? Because that's how fucked up we are? Okay. Oh, you're a bad boy. You were busy thinking of the abuse at home. How dumb. Let's go back to the fictitious animals here. We know what's best for you. If you don't want to shoot that bitch up, you're out of touch. Who's setting her up to read those lines, if not the stupidity of this cult that commits to blockading a single hour of emotional literacy? A single hour of emotional literacy. I'm 45 years old. Not a single grown-up human being has bothered to tell me any of the info on this page. My first hour of emotional literacy? Have to sit down and figure it out for myself? The substance and biology that has been motivating every human action in human history? Well, I guess if you want to do anything intelligent, ignore your fucked up cult and sit down and reinvent the wheel. How about that? How about that for a stupidity? Why don't we send kids to school, deny them all information of fire and combustion engines? Let's just have them stumble into it again. Wow, fire exists. Amazing. Don't talk about it, though. The next generation might find out. We want to keep our cult in the Stone Age physically as well as emotionally. So, this is a backdrop of severe ignorance, of severe abuse, of severe stupidity, which always leads to dishonor and violation, which always escalates violent behavior. If you don't own this, if you don't know what the fuck to do about this, why would the teachers? Why would you know once you became president? If you're fucked up and idiotic now, why would you suddenly be smart when you were dumb enough to run for president? Only an idiot wants the job. 18-hour days, set up to fail from day one, can't even read 1/100th of the information coming in, surrounded by sociopathic advisors that have their own agendas and have no more emotional literacy than you do, judged and hated by half of the country. You wanted that job? The setup we create guarantees that only an idiot would want anything to do with its leadership. And then we're surprised that we have idiots for president? Only an idiot would teach our high school curriculum, and then we wonder why our kids are idiots? The curriculum is a joke. Algebra versus house building. Chemistry versus learning to drive. Doctored history rather than learning to talk and date competently. Not a single hour of salesmanship or entrepreneurial activity in your formative years. What a fucked up joke. And kids are going to get intelligent from complete, utter morons? Give me a break. We can only believe this shit when we're that dissociated and numb from our feelings. Tool for analysis, understanding, love, and empathy. Our feelings, our emotions, are a tool. If you follow your anger, you'll start to notice what you're angry about. If you're not angry that an entire generation is being fucked over, you have not learned to use the tool of feeling and emotion to move your life and your future and the future of your cult and country in a positive direction. Which means you haven't learned to use the primary tool that motivates all human action and creates all human history. A pretty big oversight, wouldn't you say? Emotions and feelings are tools for analysis, understanding, and with understanding, love and empathy. If you don't love those boys, given the option of invisibility, numbness, and pretending that nothing's going on, or following the latest media blitz meme of shooting up the school and saying, "Hello, I don't like the system, and nobody's listening to me." Which is worse? 20 innocent people dying in school, or an entire cult being brainwashed into believing that what's happening as the status quo is okay, that 1 in 7 addicts is just fine, that 20% of the population depressed, no problem. 77% job satisfaction, who gives a shit? 70% chronic loneliness, hallelujah. Who is so fucked up that they think an entire cult asleep in mediocrity is no big deal? Entire cult of innocent people should be sacrificed to the status quo of severe cruelty and mediocrity to protect 20 kids who would otherwise grow up in that statistical bullshit? Who is so cruel that can look at the one and blame the kid rather than taking a share of responsibility for not thinking? We are. We get what we're willing to have. And if we don't show initiative to to learn the science of feeling, empathy, and emotions, the science of communication, the science of partnering to do something meaningful. Reality has a great teacher, and it's called pain and terror. You don't want to learn through intelligence willingly? You don't want to think willingly? Fine. Up the pain and terror. At some point, we are destroyed or wake up as the pain keeps going up the dial. It's our choice. It's our responsibility. Emotions and feelings are a lens of perception. They are a guide to a specific psychic location. You know, we empathize through mirror neurons, which means we take a small part of our psyche, a small part of our brain, and we try and hone in on the signal that we're getting from the other person. And this is how we understand them. This is how we stand under them. We replicate their reality. And in doing so, we hopefully learn to empathize. Because if we don't, we will create violence. If we do not attune to the people around us, we will create violence. Plain and simple. So we have to understand. And how do we find out where they are? Well, emotions and feelings are clues to their beliefs. They're clues to their thoughts. They're clues to their sensations. They're clues to their past events. Anyone see an angry, sullen, depressed, fuming individual looking down and kicking their feet and say, wow, that person must have had a really great day? No, we're not that dumb, even though we're emotionally illiterate. So they're a guide. If we truly understand the feelings with patience and understanding of another person, in the process of doing so, we will locate that psyche in a certain set of memories, with a certain history, with a certain stimulation, body stuff in their body. And we'll be able to say, aha, I see you. I see you. And in seeing you, I care about you. And in caring about you, I empathize with you. And in empathy, I take the time to understand you. I understand you and I empathize. And I attune. I get why it's offensive to you as a black man to be called a nigger and shown images of black people burning in fucked up, sociopathic white people's towns who chose you as the scapegoat for no particular reason. Complete and utter bullshit. There's no science to prove it. Nothing. We got away with enslaving you, so let's see how far we can push this. Because we don't want to deal with our shit. Because any competent idiot who wanted to improve their town, what's stopping these white people from improving their garden? From teaching their kids something useful? From developing a new technology? Nothing. So who's the fault, of their endless problems? A group of former slaves are ruining your life? Give me a fucking break, you coward. It's fucked up. It's an incredible place of fear and powerlessness to create scapegoats. Well, we raise incredibly terrified, powerless human beings, not surprisingly, by denying them emotional literacy. How powerful are you going to feel if you don't know how to tune the fuel or read the meter that powers your life? Number one, not very. Number two, that when you start to engage with your feelings, you are shamed, lectured, humiliated, and scapegoated by other people who don't know what the fuck they're doing. And three, when you are told time and time again that your felt emotional experience and your feminine side, half of who you are, is so worthless just because it exists, that you will be deranked socially and humiliated for demonstrating any signs of it. Well, that's about as powerless as it gets. Doomed to fail. Well, powerless, ignorant, idiotic human beings raised in a powerless, ignorant, idiotic cult blame their problems on someone else as a vain hope rather than face the discomfort, the awkwardness of saying, if anything's going to change, I'm going to have to do something, and I don't know what the fuck to do, and that makes me feel small. What am I going to do about feeling small and not knowing what the fuck I'm doing? What am I going to do about that? Well, I feel too small to do anything about that. And I don't know what to do about the fact that I don't know what to do. And nobody is bothering to acknowledge the crisis that I'm in, which makes me feel lonely and stupid. I don't like feeling lonely and stupid. Who can I blame? I know, Biff. He's blaming people with black skin. Well, is it working for Biff? Is Biff's life suddenly blossoming into possibilities and dreams? No. But at least he feels better. He doesn't feel quite as powerless after tyrannizing an unprotected minority. Feels good to be a bully when you feel like shit and are powerless. You can make someone else feel as terrified as you do. Well, the invention of abuse. Amazing. Who knew it was so easy to feel better? Just make someone else feel worse. In a cult capable of lowering the cost and doubling the speed of computing powers, of raising GDP to new heights, getting people to work faster for stuff they don't need, we can't figure this one out because we're chauvinists, and it never occurs to us that the answer to all our problems would lie in feminine terrain that we have been dogmatically diminishing, shaming, and hating for thousands of years. It doesn't occur to us because we're stupid. And we're stupid because life begins with cutting us in half and convincing us that the half that we need to be whole is evil, and that everyone around us would rather die or be caught than be caught dead connecting with the very parts of ourselves that we most need to grow. Our biological programming says, in a very simple, instinctive way, the majority of people are alive. True? They always are. The majority of people are doing this. True? They always are. My odds of survival go up if I do what the majority of people are doing. It's an iffy but reasonable instinct for a monkey. There is no place for intelligent human beings when the statistical evidence is clear that the majority in any group, that the majority of humankind has never in the history of the species been at the bleeding edge of evolution, change, well-being, or correct. The majority is always wrong. Wait a minute, you mean I'm going to have to think You mean I'm going to have to decide if I leave my little cocoon with the majority, whether the tail end of the bell curve that I pick is forward or backward? You see, that's what you have to do when you think. When you leave the majority, you have to pick a new location on the bell curve in the minority. And within the bell curve, you've got the laggards that are the last to catch on to the next thing, and you've got the bleeding edge. And all you need to do is figure out which is which. That's all you have to do. To become part of the bleeding edge is you have to figure out which side of the bell curve, the ass or the nose. Where's the new thing that's going to bring increased intelligence, increased efficiency of transforming energy into human well-being? Is it here or is it here? It's never in the majority. They're just mindlessly going along with last year's bleeding edge. This is too much to ask for a shame-based, trauma-based cult. It is too much for a shame-based, traumatized cult to ask its majority to think. Which means that if we're going to have an innovative acceleration in the development of humankind, we are going to have to face trauma, abuse, and chauvinism square on. You, and you are going to have to deal with that. And if not you, sure, leave it to your kids. Dope them up with sugar, dope them up with dopamine, dope them up with crappy media, and then we couldn't get around to thinking in our generation. How about you? Have a nice day. We've ruined the planet for you. Off we go. What courageous grown-ups we are. I wish I could say adults. But why add another lie that confuses the younger generation, whose probability field is more dismal than when we arrived in terms of human well-being, in terms of intelligence? Why add another level of insanity? We could at least tell them the truth that we didn't have the courage, the decency, to face our deepest fears and terrors, or to face that we couldn't face them and ask for help. In a cult that refuses to help, but asks for help for something and from something bigger than the human species, which is not the most intelligent entity in the universe. Thank heavens! Thank heavens! Thank heavens! Evolution is on an infinite bell curve, because it means there's something more intelligent than us out there. No, couldn't be. Couldn't be. More intelligent than me? Yes, absolutely. More intelligent than you. It's incredible. Ask for help. Have some humility. Most of the 10,000 cults in human history actually figured that out. We are the dumbest cult in the history of cults. Rationalist, reductionist, materialist, chauvinist, idiots, consumed by our own addictions in a trauma-illiterate cult that is consuming its host body at 10 times the rate as it's being regenerated. No cult in human history has pulled that off with this level of panache. But we are a minority. You can go to just about any cult of the last 10,000 cults or the last 10,000 languages, according to anthropologists, And somehow they managed to believe in something bigger than them and to be inspired by it. And they didn't destroy their planet as much as we have. Maybe we could learn something from the past. Maybe we could learn something from whatever it is that we can't imagine could possibly be more intelligent than ourselves. And maybe the smartest thing that we could do is to admit that we're dumb to the extent that we rely on the cult that gave us this bullshit and sold us on the lie that faster loading iTunes was worth 50,000 chemicals, a decimated ecology, and a dopamine addiction, media consumption, an obesity level that makes it almost impossible to wake up as the pain in our cult goes up and we fail our children to respond. Maybe someone or something who knows more than we do has an answer. And just maybe, if we asked for help with enough sincerity and decency from others among us who are paying attention, and from something bigger than ourselves, we could make a little headway. And if we can't, subsumed by debt, shame, fat, sugar, pornography, and lies, maybe we can explain to our children at what point did the pain in our life get so big that rather than responding to it, our primary goal came to be avoiding it at all cost, and explain the juncture that we took at that point, so that when they get to that point in their teens or 20s, they know to turn left where we turned right and understand why. If we just gave them that gift, the wisdom of the defunct elders who sold themselves out, maybe they could do a better job with the same probability field that we've inherited. Or we could start teaching emotional literacy, traumatic literacy, the art of community, creating value. We could do a little bit of that as well. And just maybe we'd become a little bit more intelligent. Intelligence, the efficiency of transforming energy into human well-being. An American is going to leave 100 metric tons in the landfill. They're not going to be any happier than they were in the Navajo tribe 500 years earlier that left less than 5 pounds, that didn't have the notion of garbage. Because back then, the same land that we stand on was sacred. A dance, a partnership, and had meaning. Less depression, less obesity, less stupidity than our cult today. Becoming more intelligent means consuming less energy and generating more well-being. It's that simple. We can learn from the ancestors we murdered in our pursuit of the cultural lie that indefinite consumption could replace the sacred relationship with that which is bigger than ourselves, the host body of which we are inextricably linked in every breath, in every drink, in every food, in every movement and each interaction, we are engaging with the mother who gave birth to us. And when we violate the mathematical principle that gives rise to our existence, you see, we are the sum total of all of the mathematical numbers that came before. When we erase and destroy the numbers out of which our number was born, we delete our own existence. It's not intelligence. It's called cancer.